As you can see, I have several tomato plants growing out through the animal fencing, and I have to decide what to do. I really have three options. First of all, just let them keep growing, and then eventually I think they will probably fall over and become a big mess. Second option is to cut the growing tip. That would stop the plant from growing up, and it would put all the energy into the already existing fruit, and then once that fruit is done, it may stop producing fruit, or it could produce suckers, and then I could grow fruit off the suckers. Third option is to actually remove the plant and take a sucker like this sucker right here, and this is about the right length, probably 9 to 12 inches. Break that sucker off, remove these branches here, and plant it down probably this deep, maybe even this deep, into the soil, and just put in new plants. My wife has always removed her plants about this time of year because they stop producing fruit. What we actually have found with the Mittleider gardening method, even though it's over 100 degrees, we are still producing fruit, as you can see right here. And then when it cools down, we'll even produce more fruit. So I don't want to start with a brand new plant and have to wait for it to grow and lose fruit while it's growing. I'd rather have a full-size plant going into the fall where we can have a bumper crop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the plants. And this is one of the big advantages to using string versus poles, is that I can simply let the string down. Here you see I have some extra string here, which would lower the plant and allow it to keep on growing. So as you can see, I've done that to some of these plants here. You can see where this plant is bent over. It starts over there, kind of sweeps down, and you can see where these plants are bent. I'm going to even lower it more because this plant is growing all the way through. The problem I have is I'm really out of string. And as you can see here, I'm at the end of my string on this plant, and I need to drop this plant down at least 1.5 feet, probably 2 feet. So I'm just going to take some more twine. I'm going to use baler twine this time, not this twine I have from Home Depot, which is poly twine. This is not working very well. I mean, it is working well, but it is cutting into the plants. This is one of my largest plants, and as you can see, it is cutting into that plant all the way up just because this twine is so thin. At the end of this season, when these come down, I'm not going to be using this twine anymore for these heavy plants. I'm replacing it all with baler twine, and there's a link below to where I get my baler twine, and you can get a lot for not very much money and use it all the way through your garden for several years and sell it to other gardeners for 10 cents for 10 feet, recover your cost, and help them have a successful garden too. This twine here is 10 feet long. I'm going to add some more to it so that I can lower these plants more. So at the end of this season, I'll be able to know how long I should really cut my twine for a long growing season here in Texas. Holy cow, look at this green bean. How huge that is. Absolutely giant. That's come over from behind. Anyway, I digress. Let's tie on some extra twine. Here I added a sheet bend. I do not recommend using a square knot, but here is a sheet bend. Maybe I'll show you how to tie that. But that allows you to get two different sizes of rope, or twine in this case, to hold securely and come apart when you want it to. So this is a 12-foot length of baler twine, and as you can see, I had to add, that's at least 1 foot there. I had to drop that plant down at least 1 foot, which I've done. And when you do that, you do risk the chance of kinking the tomato plant. Of course, everything is going to drop down, and so you may have to make considerations for that. I had to harvest some tomatoes because they were down on the ground. But this is the tomato plant here. It has a large loop now that comes around, but this tomato plant did not kink, and so it looks like it made the transformation from the foot drop well. So, as a precaution, one thing that you might consider doing is before you do this is that you do grow 9 to 12 inch long sucker on the plant so that you can have a backup in case you do accidentally kink this plant and have it die on you. I'm going to go ahead and lower the rest of my tomato plants like I have done here. This one needs to be dropped down about a foot also. This is a very thick stalked plant and has great foliage on it. And so one of the things I need to do as an adjustment is remove these leaves down here because we don't want leaves down on the ground. So I'll go ahead and do that now. I've removed the old vegetation, the vegetation that was low to the ground, and now I'm ready to lower this plant. I just kind of guessed on how much to remove. I do have some tomatoes coming on here, so I didn't want to remove any foliage above that, but I only removed it below. You can see how this little twine here is really cutting into this plant. Make sure you use the baler twine, it's worth the money. You'd hate to have a beautiful crop of whatever and have it lost because it's choked to death. The few dollars you spend on the baler twine is well worth it. Check the link below. This is how to tie a sheet bend. This came from actually sailors when they would actually bend the sheet, the sail, to tie it to the mast. So here you take the larger of the two pieces of rope or twine, you make a loop, then you take the smaller twine, you go through the loop, around the loop, and then back under that twine right here, the same twine, and you have a little cross that happens right there. You snug it down, and then that is the sheet bend right there. We're bending the sheet. Like I said, it holds really well. As you can imagine, all the pressure against a sail on a ship. They've been using this for hundreds of years, if not thousands. And it comes undone easily also. The only difference between this and a square knot is you make a loop with the square knot, you come in, around, and then you go back into the loop to make a square knot, which is not what we want to do. We just want to cross underneath the small twine and then come back out on top of the knot, just like this. Then we just snug it up and we have our sheet bend, and that will hold thousands of pounds of pressure. This stalk did not make a circle or loop, it just kind of went way out over here and now it's coming back up. So I'm not going to stress it because I don't want to snap the stalk, but that's a thick stalk and I'm just going to work with what I have. I mentioned that I am still getting fruit set and it's over 100 degrees. That's true. I forgot to mention that this particular bed gets shade from about 2 o'clock on from the house. The other beds that are not shaded, I did add some shade cloth to the top, which you can see over there. And that dramatically cooled down the plants. This one is grown through the netting and is really difficult to get through. I may break it or I may just cut it off. But right here is another sucker growing. And so if I do cut this off, then I'm still good to go and this plant keeps on growing. As you can see, I was able to successfully take that out of the netting and did not have to cut it off, which gives me a couple other options here. This is a yellow plum tomato which creates beautiful tomatoes, and I have several suckers here that I can take off and start growing completely new tomato plants. That's called cloning. Watch for my video called Tomato Plant Cloning. Here's what the ripe fruit looks like on the yellow plum. Absolutely gorgeous fruit. As I worked the tomato plant through the animal netting, the growing tip broke off. So I do have a sucker right here, kind of hidden by this leaf. There's the sucker. And so I simply started using that as the growing tip now. And that will continue to grow with the plant. This T-frame is an 8-foot long 4x4 put into the ground 15 inches. So the top of the vertical 4x4 is 7 feet. So we got 7 feet 4 inches. We got another foot on top of that, which makes it about 8.5 feet tall. And some of these plants here are over 10 feet tall. So we're fitting a 10-foot tall plant in at about a 7-foot height here. And if you look at the bottom here, it took a little bit of training. I was able to kind of wrap the stalk of the plant kind of around. You can see this one here comes over here, comes around, and up here. That one moves over there. They're all just kind of all over the place. I try to bring them to the center of the bed so I can work out on the outside. But we have some very, very tall and high producing tomato plants here. Just check the thermometer here in the garden. It's 94 degrees. It's probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So we're going to hit another 100-degree day today here. Another thing I noticed, I haven't been getting all my suckers off. And so by getting these plants out where I can see them better, I can take these suckers off and help the plant grow more tomatoes and a larger fruit. This is where we started. If you notice the difference between where we started and where we ended, all my tomato plants are now below the top of the T-frames. I only broke one growing tip, and then I just wound up the sucker, so that still is growing. These tomato plants will continue to grow and produce all summer long, probably into the first frost, which will be somewhere around first part of December. But in reality, I will be covering this with plastic, so hopefully we'll be able to produce tomatoes well into January. Hopefully this video on how to use the Mittleider vertical growing method will be able to help you extend your growing season and help you produce more fruits and vegetables than in the past. This is called the poor man's hydroponic system, and this is the method that they use in hydroponics to keep the plants growing, because they can have extended seasons inside of a greenhouse. And with the Mittleider growing method, growing vertically and covering with plastic to protect against cold weather, you can do the same thing at a fraction of the cost. This is LDS Prepper reminding you, if you are prepared, you shall not fear. And if you use this Mittleider vertical growing method, lowering your plants and covering them with plastic, you'll be able to increase your yields dramatically.